Michael Carter always believed marriage was built on consistency. He and Anna had been together for nearly a decade, and their life together was calm, structured, and at least on the surface happy. They lived in a quiet suburb of Portland, Oregon. He was an architect who worked from home. She was an artist who had only recently begun showing her work publicly again. Their house was full of quiet. Moments shared, coffee on the porch, soft jazz in the evenings, dinners eaten in silence but not discomfort. They weren't passionate in the dramatic movie-like sense, but they understood each other. Or so Michael thought. Lately, though, something had changed. It started when Anna joined a local art collective. At first, Michael was proud of her for reconnecting with her passion. She'd stopped painting for years after her father passed away. And seeing her pick up the brush again made him feel hopeful for her and for them. She started going to more gallery events and meeting other creatives. One name started to come up often. Ethan. Ethan was in graphic design, part of the same group, younger by a few years. From the way Anna described him, energetic, passionate about his work, deeply supportive, it was clear Ethan made an impression. At first, Michael didn't think much of it. Friends were normal. Anna was friendly by nature, and Michael trusted her. But soon he noticed she mentioned Ethan more than anyone else. Michael remembered one particular Saturday afternoon. Anna had been out at a group painting session, and when she came home, she looked lighter, happier than he'd seen her in months. He asked how it went. She smiled, said it was wonderful, then went upstairs and stayed there the rest of the evening. It wasn't the words. It was the silence that followed. Over the next few weeks, Michael watched the distance grow. She was still kind, still warm in small ways, touching his arm when passing by, asking about his work, but her eyes weren't in it anymore. There was a softness missing. She was with him physically, but emotionally, it felt like she was drifting toward someone else. Michael didn't want to jump to conclusions. He thought maybe it was stress or a creative phase, but he wasn't naive. One night, after Anna had gone to sleep early, Michael found himself scrolling through her art collective's website. There, in a photo from a recent show, was Anna standing beside Ethan. They weren't touching, but the way they looked at each other told Michael everything. It was a look Anna hadn't given him in years. He closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. That week, Michael tried harder. He cooked dinner twice, picked up flowers on a Tuesday just because, and suggested they take a weekend trip to the coast like they used to. Anna smiled and thanked him, but there was a hesitation in her eyes. Her responses were polite, appreciative even, but not full of love. Not the kind they once shared. One Thursday evening, as Michael was doing the dishes, Anna came into the kitchen and leaned against the counter. She watched him for a moment, then said softly, "We haven't really talked lately." He turned to face her, wiping his hands on a towel. "I know. I've been feeling confused," she said. "Not about you. About me. About everything." Michael nodded slowly. "Is there someone else?" She hesitated. "I haven't done anything. But yes, I've connected with someone. It wasn't intentional. It just happened." Michael felt the breath leave his chest, but he didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse or beg. Instead, he asked, "Do you love him?" She looked down. "I don't know. It's not like that. Not yet. But he sees me. He inspires me. I feel alive around him." That was the moment Michael understood. This wasn't about betrayal. It was about absence. An emotional absence that had quietly grown between them, unnoticed until someone else filled the space. They stood in silence for a while. The house felt bigger than usual. Colder. "I love you, Michael," Anna whispered. "But I don't feel the same way I used to." "I know," he replied. "I've felt it too." He didn't sleep much that night. Instead, he lay awake beside her, thinking about the life they'd built, the memories. The quiet mornings, the late-night talks, the laughter that used to echo through their walls. None of it felt false. But he realized something painful. Just because something was good once doesn't mean it's meant to last forever. He knew what was coming. He could fight it, argue, beg her to stay. But what good would that do? Love shouldn't be a cage. And if Anna was already halfway gone, holding on would only make things worse. By morning, Michael had made up his mind. He would not stand in her way. If she truly believed this connection with Ethan was something real, something she needed to explore, he wouldn't stop her. Not out of weakness, but out of love. The morning after their quiet conversation, Michael sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, watching the steam rise and disappear. Anna hadn't come downstairs yet. He had barely slept, but he wasn't angry. He wasn't even confused anymore. He was just tired, not of her, but of pretending things were fine. When she finally walked in, her steps were slow, unsure. Her eyes searched his face, probably expecting confrontation or maybe a painful silence. Instead, Michael pulled out the chair across from him and gently said, "Sit." Anna looked surprised, but did. He took a long breath. "If this thing with Ethan means something to you, if it makes you feel alive again, I won't stop you." Her lips parted slightly. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Michael said softly, "if he makes you happy, go. I love you enough to let you find that." Tears immediately welled up in her eyes. Not dramatic ones, quiet, still tears that didn't fall yet, just hovered, waiting. "I never meant for this to happen," she said. "I believe you," he replied. And he did. They didn't argue. They didn't shout or say things they'd regret. There was just truth between them now. Honest, raw, heavy truth. Michael explained that while he still loved her, Kay could see that she had emotionally outgrown the version of their life that once felt so certain. And maybe, in a way, he had to. Anna nodded, wiping her cheek with her sleeve. "What does this mean for us?" Michael looked down at his hands. "It means we give each other space. It means you figure out what this really is with him. And I take time to figure out who I am without you." It wasn't about giving permission. It wasn't about letting her do anything. She wasn't his possession. It was about choosing not to fight what was already changing. Over the next few days, the house took on a strange stillness. They were careful with each other, polite, respectful. They shared dinner, and they were both home but didn't try to force conversation. There was no anger, just the quiet grief of a love that was slowly transforming into something else. Something more like friendship. Maybe even gratitude. Anna didn't run to Ethan. She took time, just like Michael asked her to. She didn't bring him to the house, didn't mention him unless asked. And Michael didn't ask often. Instead, he started spending more time outside. He went on long walks, drove to the coast on a Sunday just to clear his head, and reconnected with an old friend, Ben. Someone he'd lost touch with during the early years of marriage. Ben noticed the change in him right away. "You look like someone who just dropped 100 pounds, but not in a good way." Michael gave a sad smile. "You're not too far off." He told Ben everything. Not in a bitter, venting way, but honestly, like someone who needed to be heard. Ben didn't judge. He just listened. "Maybe this is a good thing," Ben said after a while. "You've been the strong one for so long. Maybe it's time you focus on you." Michael thought about that during one of his evening walks. For years, he had lived to support Anna's dreams, to make the house run, to be the stable one. But now that the foundation had shifted, he realized he'd neglected parts of himself. Dreams he once had. Passions he had buried under routine. He started sketching again. Not houses. Just whatever came to mind. Trees, streets, faces. Things that reminded him of who he was before he was someone's husband. Then, one Wednesday afternoon, Anna came home early. Michael was sitting on the back porch, sketchbook in hand. She stood in the doorway, hesitant. "Can we talk?" He nodded, and she sat beside him. "I saw Ethan again," she said. "Not for anything serious. We just talked. He's kind. He listens. And he sees me in a way that reminds me of how I used to see myself." Michael closed his sketchbook. And I don't know what it means yet," she said honestly. "But I think I need to keep figuring it out." He looked at her, really looked. She seemed lighter, braver, and strangely, he wasn't jealous. Maybe because deep down, he knew it wasn't about Ethan. It was about her learning how to feel alive again. "I want that for you," he said. "Truly." Anna looked down, blinking away tears. "What about you?" He smiled gently. "I'm figuring that out too." That evening, they agreed on something big. Anna would move in with a friend for a few weeks. Not a full separation, not yet. Just space, time, respect for each other's need to grow. Individually, as she packed a small bag that night, Michael sat on the couch, holding a mug of tea she had made him. The house already felt different, emptier, but also honest. Finally honest. Before leaving, Anna paused in the doorway. "No matter what happens, I need you to know. You're the kindest man I've ever known." Michael gave a small nod, emotions caught in his throat. "And I'll always be grateful for the years we shared." The first week without Anna felt strange. The house was quiet, too quiet. Michael would catch himself pouring 2 cups of coffee only to remember she wasn't there. Her favorite mug still sat on the shelf. Her slippers were still by the bedroom door. Even though she had only packed a small bag, the house felt emptier than ever. But strangely, he didn't feel broken. He felt still, like someone watching the first calm after a long storm. Michael began to fill his days with new habits. He joined a weekend hiking group through an app and started walking with strangers who became fast acquaintances. On those hikes, he talked more than he had in years. Not about Anna, not directly, but about life. Regrets, career, dreams he had shelved. He even admitted to one hiker, a retired teacher named Greg, that he had no idea who he was outside of being Anna's husband. Greg had smiled and said, "Then you've got the best kind of freedom, a blank page." Michael held on to that idea, a blank page. Meanwhile, Anna texted sometimes. Short messages, kind, respectful. She wasn't pushing or avoiding. She was giving him space while she took her own. From what Michael could tell, she was spending more time at the studio, focusing on her work. She mentioned Ethan once, just in passing. Michael didn't ask questions. He didn't want to be the man who waited around hoping she would change her mind. He wanted to be the man who changed his life regardless of what she chose. One afternoon, while reorganizing the attic, Michael found a box he hadn't opened in years. Inside were his old photography gear, photos from college, and sketchbooks from his early design days before he was building shopping centers and office parks. Back when he used to dream of designing museums and parks. Things that made people feel. He spent hours flipping through old photos, remembering how much he used to love capturing light, people, moments. Without thinking too much, he grabbed his old camera, dusted it off, and went downtown to take photos. That day, something inside him clicked. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but like a door slowly opening at a local coffee shop. While reviewing his photos, a woman at the next table leaned over and said, "That's a great shot, the one with the kid and the bubbles." Michael looked up, surprised. The woman had soft brown eyes, probably mid-40s, and a calm presence about her. "Thanks," he said. "Just getting back into photography after a long time." They talked for 20 minutes. Her name was Rachel, a freelance editor and part-time writing teacher. They talked about books, coffee, and the quiet comfort of small creative habits. It wasn't flirtatious, just easy, natural. When she left, she smiled and said, "If you ever need a second opinion on those photos, I'm usually here Wednesdays." Michael didn't say he was married. He didn't need to. Nothing happened. But when he walked home, he realized something. He didn't feel guilty. He felt alive. Later that week, Anna asked if they could meet. She didn't say why, just that she wanted to talk. They met at a small diner they used to visit when they were dating. When Michael arrived, she was already there, looking out the window. She looked calm, but her hands fidgeted slightly. "Thanks for coming," she said. Michael smiled. "Of course." They made small talk for a bit, how work was going, a funny story about a neighbor. Then she got quiet. "I wanted to tell you something," she said carefully. "Ethan and we've decided not to pursue anything serious. Khan mightn't react." He just waited. I realized, she continued, that what I was looking for in him wasn't about him. It was about what I felt I'd lost. And I thought someone new would fill that space. But it doesn't work that way. Michael nodded slowly. I understand. I needed the space to see clearly, she said. And now I do. And I don't expect anything from you, Michael. I just needed you to know. They sat quietly after that. No one rushed. There were no big declarations, no begging to start over. Just a people who had lived something together, broken something together. And were now speaking honestly for maybe the first time in years. Michael looked at her and said gently, I'm not angry. I just want us both to be at peace. Whatever that looks like. Anna smiled softly. That's all I want to. That night, Michael went home alone. And it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. He wasn't sure if Anna would come back. He wasn't even sure if he wanted her to. Not out of hurt. But because he was beginning to build something new for himself, he picked up his camera again and went out just before sunset. The light was perfect. He snapped photos of people laughing, dogs playing, an older couple holding hands on a bench. Each picture felt like a step toward something better. Michael stared at Rachel's message for a moment, then placed the phone on the kitchen table. It wasn't a complicated text, just a kind gesture, a compliment, an invitation maybe. But what stood out the most was that it didn't feel heavy. It didn't carry years of tension or history. It felt light, open, and for the first time in a long time. Michael was ready for something like that. He didn't reply right away. Not because he didn't want to, but because he wanted to answer it as the man he was becoming, not the one still caught between a past and future. So he spent the day doing things he loved. He walked to the farmer's market, picked up fresh bread, and stopped by the bookstore he used to frequent before life got too busy. He flipped through a photography magazine and thought, this is who I used to be, and maybe who I'm returning to. Later that evening, as golden light filled the living room, he finally replied to Rachel's message. Would love to tell you the story. Maybe over coffee next week. She replied quickly. Wednesday. Same place. And just like that, something gentle began to form. Meanwhile, Anna had settled into her own routine. Though she hadn't moved far, her world looked different too. She had more time for painting, more time for herself, and more time for silence. The kind that wasn't sad but reflective. She didn't see Ethan anymore, not because of guilt, but because that chapter had naturally closed. What had seemed like a spark turned out to be just a flash of light showing her what she had lost. Not what she wanted long term. She and Michael still texted. Not daily, but often enough to feel connected. There was no pressure to fix anything. Just mutual care. Sometimes she would send him a photo of a half-finished painting, and he'd reply with one of his sketches. No tension. Just sharing. When Wednesday came, Michael met Rachel at the coffee shop. She was already there, wearing a simple green scarf, reading something on her tablet. When she looked up, she smiled like they were old friends. They talked for hours, not about broken marriages or lost love, but about photography, music, and quiet things like how fall always felt like a fresh start by the end of their time together. Rachel looked at him thoughtfully and said, "You seem like someone who's done a lot of letting go." Michael nodded. It wasn't easy, but it was right. In the days that followed, he saw her again. Once for a gallery opening, once for a walk in the park. Nothing rushed. Nothing assumed. Just two people enjoying small steps. One evening, Anna asked to meet again. Not for anything big, just to talk. They met at the park this time, under an old oak tree where they once had a picnic years ago. She brought a thermos of tea, and they sat on the bench like old friends. "I wanted to thank you," Anna said, breaking the silence. "For what?" Michael asked. "For handling everything with grace. You could have made it hard. You could have been angry or cold. But instead, you gave me space. And now I see things I couldn't before." Michael smiled gently. "We both made mistakes. But we also found clarity." She nodded. Do you think we'll ever be what we were? He looked at her honestly. No, but I don't think that's a bad thing. What we were was beautiful for its time. But maybe now we get to be something different. Something better in a new way. Anna wiped away a small tear, not from pain, but from acceptance. I want us to stay in each other's lives. So do I, he said. But only if it's healthy, for both of us. They hugged before they left, and it wasn't emotional or confusing. It was kind, human, forgiving. Months passed. Michael and Rachel continued to see each other slowly. There was no pressure, just a growing friendship with quiet affection. He didn't rush to label anything. He just let it grow. Anna eventually moved to a small art loft downtown. She held her first show in spring. Michael came and stood quietly in the back, smiling as she greeted guests with confidence. When their eyes met, they exchanged a small nod. A silent thank you, Dot. In the end, Michael didn't lose his wife. He let go of a version of her that no longer existed, and in doing so, found a better version of himself. And Anna, in losing comfort, found freedom. Not freedom to escape, but freedom to become whole again. Their love hadn't failed. It had simply evolved.